sort of from all over the Southeast. Never lived anywhere for more than 4 or 5 years. My father was not military, but he was in textiles. And so at the time, when they were opening factories, he worked for Lee Blue Jeans. And so when that was booming in the U.S. But I was born in Alabama in a small town called Boaz. I have a background in industrial and systems engineering. But my mother was a school teacher. She taught for 39 years. And so I think the education piece was in my blood. I've worked for Japanese automotive, for the federal government. When I had my third child, I thought I would try to be a stay-at-home mom, and I didn't do that very well. I started volunteering at a local hands-on science museum. And so just so over the course of time began to say, we could do that better. We could do this more efficiently. And so I ended up on staff. It was a small museum called SciQuest Hands-On Science Center. We were looking at merging with the Space and Rocket Center in some form or fashion. We were a very small nonprofit. We actually ran out of funding. I had the opportunity to come over here and really had no idea what I was getting into, other than it was informal education. We had done STEM camps. We did half-day, week-long camps. I came to discover what we did in an entire summer, we do in a week here.
Wow.
But I came in, I had the opportunity to come in as the director of simulations, which is our space simulations, and to work with Nathan, who trained me how to do my job, and very gracefully, and I haven't looked back since.
You said, so tell me a little bit, where did you go to school?
So I went to Tennessee Tech.
Okay.
So I have a degree in industrial engineering and then a master's in systems engineering.
What made you interested in going into those fields?
I think that was my dad was in manufacturing. And so I originally wanted to be an architect. My guidance counselor talked me out of it. So I don't know why. But just the efficiency, I'm very drawn to processes. How can we be more efficient? How can you make a product better?
Sure.
And so that sort of merged in with the informal education, and this is a large operation, so I think every day we're looking at how can we make every child's experience the best experience.
Right. So when you graduated with that degree, did you do something specifically with that degree for a little while first?
I did. So I worked for Japanese automotive, so a supplier to Nissan in Tennessee called Calsonic. And so I worked there for about 3 years, and I had friends here in Huntsville because I had gone to middle school here. And I came to work for the U.S. Army here as a civilian. And so I worked in production engineering here for about 13 years.
Okay. And what from there you went to the museum?
Yes.
Okay. What brought that shift on?
Well, like I said, I was going to try to be a stay-at-home mom, and I started volunteering there when my daughter started going to Mother's Morning Out a few mornings a week, and I just started volunteering there for something to do. And then, just ended up on staff part-time.
Just never left.
And they asked me to come full-time, and then, rode that out.
So tell me a little bit about when you were young.
Yeah, so from small town Ohio, and I'm talking middle of nowhere Amish country. My parents owned their own business when we were growing up. They do draperies, and so I was always going to work with Dad. Mom worked out of the house. And so if I did stay home, she just kind of threw us in the yard for the day. And we were out playing in the woods. We live in the middle of nowhere. So it was always outside. And it was, I guess that fostered a lot of the creativity. I had to make up a lot of games. I have 2 older brothers, and one was significantly older, so I didn't see him a whole lot. But the middle one, he was close. And so he and I, play ball, always into sports, things like that. Really enjoyed that. But again, the creative mindset kind of came in at a young age. Loved Legos, and that was back in the 90s when you had the big tub of Legos.
Right.
You just dump them all in and then you just build. And so I always loved getting creative with that. It was really fun.
Do you still do Legos?
I do. My son is getting to that point where he's getting into the Legos, and I'm so excited about it because I can start building. But I got to let him do his thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great growing up. We didn't have a lot of extra, so things like Space Camp were always kind of out of the realm of possibility, or so I thought. I remember, watching Nickelodeon as a kid, seeing Space Camp given away on there.
It was a Double Dare final prize.
Yes, it was. I loved watching that. It was awesome. It's one of my favorite shows growing up. But then I got involved in the Scouts when I was a young age. And so my oldest brother, who's 8 years older than me, he was already in Scouts. So I've been in camping world ever since I was born. And just kind of grew up in that world as well. And so that really got my spark going in that direction. So when I got into middle school, high school, I was doing the camping thing. Always really into sports. Loved being active. And then as I was getting ready for college, I wasn't quite sure the direction I was going to go. My oldest brother had done Army ROTC at State University in Cincinnati, so I just followed in his footsteps.
Yeah.
I did that for about 2.5 years before I was like, this is not for me. More of the schooling side, and I was like, this is not for me. And so just kind of left school and started going around working at different camps across the country. I worked in New York for a little while, worked in North Carolina, and I remember seeing an application to come work at Space Camp, and I was working my way out west. And I was like, there's no way I can get at Space Camp. I'm not smart enough to be here. And lo and behold, they accepted my application. I was like, this is crazy. I'm going. And I got here. The goal was to be here just a couple months. And after, 3 to 6 months, I kept getting, different cross trainings into different things. Started as a crew trainer, our camp counselor level, and kept getting cross training in different things. And then eventually I got promoted into different things. And lo and behold, it's been 15 years later, 14 years later, I'm still here. I've left the Rocket Center twice. I've come back twice. So she has 2 of my resignation letters that she likes to remind me of every now and then. But it's just been a dream come true to be here. Again, coming from the camping world, I've found my place. And now the role that I'm in now is that creative role, a chance to look at the future and figure out, what's coming next. And Robin, she's really good at grounding me. I'm kind of we're the yin and the yang. I'm crazy, creative, and she's still creative, but she grounds me in reality, which is nice. So it's a good partnership.
Robin, what is your role here today, and what do you do?
Sure. So I have a really amazing team who makes our camp operation happen. So we run 50 weeks a year, essentially.
Wow.
Sort of in 2 fronts. So summer, from Memorial Day to Labor Day, it's individual season, we call it. So anybody can sign up their child ages 9 to 18 to come to camp. And so, but once we get past Labor Day, we move to group season. So these are school groups, tour operators, scout groups who come. Our bread and butter business is that age 9 to 18, the week-long program. They come in on Sunday, they stay in our dormitories, eat in our cafeteria, and then they graduate and go home on Friday. We have a shorter version, a 3-day camp. We call that a Pathfinder, but also on the weekends we have family camp, we have adult camp, we have a teacher camp. And so I've got staff that work 24/7. So we've got our camp counselors, we've got an operational leadership team who's here to supervise the counselors and the children in camp. But also we hire nurses. We have a full sick bay and infirmary. So we have nurses here 24/7 when children are here in program. We've got lifeguards. We have scuba instructors. We have a ropes course. And so really I am, I have a team who runs the day-to-day, but I'm looking, currently I'm working on budgets for 2026. We're looking at plans. We're about to shift gears to curriculum development, where we go back and we dig in and we look at what's working, what's not working, what could we make better, what adjustments have happened in the space industry or aviation that we want to highlight, and then working alongside with Nathan and the education team of what's possible.
So you've been here quite a while. Can you share a little bit about what has changed? Because the space industry has changed a lot. I mean, the idea of commercial space flight is so new and has made things so different, and NASA's role has shifted a little bit. So can you tell me a little bit about how those sort of changes, like what have you seen and how has that affected Space Camp?
Yeah, so I've been here almost 10 years, and so I think the one thing that is really unique about Space Camp, so we've been doing this since 1982, and so there's kind of a formula, and so even though our camps are themed aviation, space, robotics, and cyber, the magic that happens, and I think what people remember about their experience here is really none of those things. At least not specifically. They were inspired to go learn something more about all of those things, but we really find that they learn something about themselves. And so when you come to Space Camp or any of our camp programs, you're put on a team, and that team of individuals who don't know each other on Sunday, who throughout the course of the week become family.
Yeah.
When the stars align and the magic happens, that group of children who are angsty and they're nervous and sometimes they've never been away from home. Some of them are the overly confident, the one that's walking at the front of the line with the crew trainers who won't be quiet, asking you all the questions. And then you've got the one in the back who's a little shy, who's not made friends. Through the course of the week where we're putting them through the paces to work together, we're going to start to settle that one down and raise this one up to where they learn to trust each other and to know if we make mistakes, okay, how do we move forward from that? And so I think that hasn't changed. And so when COVID came along and we ran, the COVID summer with all of the crazy health restrictions, our interim CEO at the time said, well, we just can't do missions. And the simulated space mission, or for any of the programs, they have some sort of culminating mission. That's the inspirational piece. That's the piece where we really role play and the magic happens. And we said, no, wait a minute. We have to do that. And so the team got really creative and we figured out how to do it. But also many people said, oh, yes, you guys are just going to do virtual space camp, right? Because everybody was doing the things online. And we thought long and hard about it because we had closed our doors after that summer. We didn't know if we'd be able to reopen again in the summer. And that was the obvious choice. But because of the immersive experience here, we said, no, actually we're not. Because we don't know how we reopen in person after doing it online in the same, to keep the magic.
Right.
And so we did. And so whereas, this is the long answer, sorry.
It's okay.
But, we started out in 1982 telling NASA's story, right? It was all in the public, arena. You could get all the information we needed. But as more and more of the commercial emphasis came, and now there's new and exciting things every day happening, it changes the curriculum pieces, but really the recipe is still the same. And so, the one of the things that Nathan's working on in the future is that, now I think through COVID, kids are learning differently. Their attention spans are different. We see different behavioral, dynamics. And so I think we're always trying to make it more immersive and more hands-on, but less sitting in a classroom with someone. There's some pieces of the history you need, but kids learn differently. And so we're really trying to change that. But I think, so in some ways we haven't changed at all, but other ways we're trying to change the content to make it more meaningful and more inspirational, because certainly there's so much going on right now. It's so exciting.
Well, Nathan, your role is to look forward. So that's a little bit about the past and the history of and where Space Camp has been. Tell me about your role in thinking about where Space Camp is going.
Yeah, so I started here in 2011 when there were still, shuttle program was still strong. And I remember the last shuttle launch, one of my employees was like, can I go to that? Like he requested off work and drove through the night to get there.
Wow.
And now we're at a place where who knows what's coming next. I mean, I never thought that we'd be seeing the things that we're seeing nowadays in some of the private sectors. So moving forward, we take that and I look at it and I go, okay, we still need to tell all of these stories, but we need to tell NASA's story. So we're going to do that. And so we're shifting. I'm shifting how I think about this into more of like legacy, where we've been, the histories. How do we get that so that we know where we're going, which is that future. So the Inspiration 4 building that we're currently under construction with, there's a new mission floor in there. This is in addition to the current mission floor, and that's going to be what I'm looking at as more the futuristic floor. I use the term science faction a lot. It's not science fiction. It's not completely made up. It's based in reality, but because we're looking in the future, we don't exactly know how these things will be done. So as we move forward, I kind of want to be mission agnostic, if you will. So I don't want to necessarily behold us to any specific company, organization. I want to tell all the stories. And that's what we're looking at doing as we move forward, especially looking at lunar missions, Mars missions, space station missions. What does that look like? What does that feel like? We've made some really great partnerships in this building so that we can tell that story, but we can bring the students' minds and open them up I talk often about education is really important, but I really want to focus on inspiration through immersion. So get them immersed in an environment, get them to feel what it's like to live in a habitat, a space station, a capsule, whatever it might be, and explore. Let their creativity, let their minds wander, and really kind of see how would they do this? How would a 10-year-old who's pretending to be a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old, how would they manage this mission? Where does their brain naturally go? Because ultimately, they're going to be the ones that figure this stuff out. So it'll be really kind of cool to see it happen.
We actually hope they leave with more questions than they came with.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Tell me, can you talk a little bit more about that? Why is that?
Yeah,
what is the goal?
You know, when you're thinking about this generation of children here in our camps, they're the ones that are going to take us to Mars and beyond. And so many times they've thought, some students come and they know everything there is to know about some particular facet, of space, and others are just here because somebody thought it was a great idea. But when they start into this immersive, and then they're like, well, you know what? If you're on Mars, you can't run to Walmart. How do you take what you need? How do you plan for those things? And one of the beauty of it all is when you're thinking about the future is we don't have all the answers. And so we really hope, when our camp counselors come in, many of them are engineers, aerospace focused, but some are business majors, some are education. And I'm like, we're going to give you training on what you need to deliver the content and how to wrangle children. But at the end of the day, I don't expect you to be an expert on space in 2 weeks training.
Right.
But it's okay. And if they ask you questions you don't know the answer to, embrace that. We want to cultivate the critical thinking skills for these students.
Yeah.
Just to tag on to that, a lot of the technology that is going to get us there and help us survive doesn't exist yet. These kids are going to be the ones that create this tech and these solutions to these problems. So if we can present some of these problems and maybe our version of a solution, they can look at that and go, but that doesn't make sense. Right. And again, it's sparking that, why would we do it that way? And then they can go out and maybe create new ways to do this.
So how do you design programs for this future that you don't know is coming, right? For a while, because space shuttles were the way. That was how we did things, right? And so we could build, Space Camp can build a space shuttle simulator. They could build International Space Center, the International Space Station, mock-up. Those things were real and present, and as those things have and are going away, and we don't know what's replacing them, how do you build this system agnostic, not all questions are known experience?
Yeah, and that's where that science faction comes in. So I look at this and I go, okay, what is reality? I mean, certain things just function certain ways. For instance, certain engines and rocket boosters are only going to get you to certain altitudes. You can't go all the way to Mars,
right,
on certain capabilities. So we look at that and we go, okay, we're probably going to be using capsules. We're going to be using, things like that. You're going to have to live somehow. We can't going to the moon. You could survive in an Apollo capsule for, 3-4 days in close quarters. You're not going to be able to do that for 6 to 9 months. So we got to have a bigger space. So you take some of what is reality and you go, okay, let's flush this out a little bit. And then you look at the what ifs. When you get down on the surface of Mars, what kind of habitat would we be looking at? I mean, is it inflatable? Is it rigid? Is it something that's already there, using the materials that are on the surface? Who knows? And that's where we get to have a little bit of fun with some of that. I mean, we have what we think we'll do, and we kind of go down that route. But myself specifically, I spend a lot of my time talking to industry professionals across the board. People who live this every day. I talked to a girl not long ago who's an expert on Mars rovers. So I'm getting what it's like to put vehicles on Mars and how to move them around. I'm talking to folks who are astronauts who've been up into space. They know what it's like to be up there. But then on the flip side, I'm also talking to professional gamers. People who create these things. One of the companies I'm working with is a group that does simulations for video games and things like that. And so you get a little bit of that storytelling aspect in there,
right,
as well as you bring in the other side. It's the realistic aspect, and you kind of blend it all together, and you hopefully come out with this really great product that is what are the Space Camp missions coming up in the future.
And adding on to that, so we can also look at what has been done and speculate how we might do that. So one example in our space station missions that we currently do, for any of the anomalies that we can introduce, because there's always, you train for the mission, and then when it's happening, things are going to go wrong, right? That's the critical thinking. How does the team work together to solve the problems? And so we can base those anomalies on things that have happened on the space station. The ammonia tank goes out. Okay, now we didn't train for that. We have to rely on someone in mission control to talk us through that repair. But one example was we actually took a team out to Marshall Space Flight Center and looked at an EVA, extravehicular activity spacewalk that was being done called MISSY. It was the Materials International Space Station Experiment, which is essentially a suitcase of different material samples that they could take outside the space station, open it, and see how they perform exposed to that atmosphere. And so our technicians, just from looking at it and taking some photographs, replicated that as something that we can do in our space station mission. So as we were developing the Mars mission, we said, you're probably going to want to do something similar in the Martian environment. So let's create our version of MISSY that you would do on Mars. If you're just setting up a base, you might want to test, different fabric samples, different, duct tape, different things.
Right.
And so we set up a similar spacewalk to be done there, and you always have to have good acronym. And so we had MISSY, so we went with MR, which was the Mars Sample Test Rack. So we can have a little fun in thinking about what we're currently doing. But when you're thinking about exploring new, places and new, you want to reduce risk, you're going to do something similar that you've done before.
Well, and coming off that too, we talk a lot about what the missions are. Going back to what Robin said earlier about COVID, what we found, some of the secret sauce is the soft skills. And so when you talk about the makeup of this, there needs to be, the form, the vehicle, the habitat, those things. But we also have to add in the soft skills, the teamwork, communication, self-confidence, leadership. And so I'm looking at how do we build some of that stuff in, and that's where, we go and talk to the team and figure this out. And want to kind of force the kids into a way that challenges them in those areas, because those are the things that help that question why formulate. When I'm confident in myself, when I'm confident in my team, when I step up to be a leader and we communicate as a group, we start to ask each other questions, and then we come up with that why. Why do we do it that way? Is that the best way? Is there a better way to do this? And you have to learn to, the back and forth, listen and work together and all that kind of stuff. So we really try to build that into these missions as well.
All of these things, I'm assuming all of these things adjust for the age groups that they're in. How do you adjust the different projects for, like, the difference between a family weekend or an educator's time or a week with 9-year-olds?
It's the same recipe. And so when families come, it's the same formula. Similar activities, they have the simulated space missions, except that the children are going to have the leadership roles. So anywhere that we can put someone in a situation where they can grow in confidence, or where they might not have seen themselves. When you're here for a week and you have more than one opportunity to test out, a mission position or a different role within a small group activity, the first time we're going to try to keep you in your comfort zone. But as the week goes on, we're going to try to push you a little bit. And this is particularly with adults. We will have, where you wouldn't predict it, right? You'll have someone who'll come through graduation and they're almost to the point of tears, who said, I was about to give up on myself, on my career, like I didn't even realize it, but now I have this renewed sense of self. I learned to trust people again. And just it's really fun to watch. And the educators, they have a 4-day program. It's professional development. They earn a large number of continuing education credits, and they don't have to be from a STEM-related program. We get librarians, we get you name it, they come. And again, one story, I was out at a conference one time, and this guy came running up. I had on my my camp jacket, and he was so excited to tell me about how he was in education. He was actually about to leave the field. He was going to become a truck driver. Like, he was just done, And he came to Space Academy for Educators, and it just completely flipped, the script for him. And he was re-energized to go back in the classroom. And I think it emphasizes a different way to learn and a different way to interact. And so like I said, it's really the same formula.
There are aspects that change, though. And I will say this. This is a funny story. Years ago, I had a group down at Aviation Challenge, and I'm teaching them flight simulations. It was a custom group, so it's adults. And I had some folks who were, 40s and 50s in the flight sims. That was one of the days that I started to pull out my hair. Not that I had a whole lot to pull out, but, it was kind of that. It is so hard to teach someone who's not accustomed to running a simulation how to partake in it. I'll get a 9-year-old in there. They pick it up like that. It's so easy for them because of the way the world is changing. Gaming has become such a thing. Younger students, kids, they pick it up really quick, but a 45-year-old in a flight sim is different. So you kind of go into some of that with that mentality of like, okay, certain people will pick up certain roles better.
Right.
And in some of our missions and across campus, we tell our team leaders and our crew trainers, understand your team, read your team. Start to pick up on how, the students learn, who's a kinesthetic, who's an auditory, and try to make sure you're hitting all of that. So the formula does stay the same for all of it, but we recognize that there are certain aspects that an adult is different than a kid.
Sure. What about going, so we've heard a little bit about the past and the future of the camp itself. Tell me about the future of getting folks here. You said when you were a kid that it was cost prohibitive for your family, right? And that is that is not an uncommon experience. What can be done about that?
So we've got several different ways that children get here. So the individual season, like I mentioned, of summer, so we have a robust scholarship program, and that's based on need. And so a large percentage of the children come that way. We have the state of Alabama actually provides schools in Alabama get a discounted rate for those schools to come. And the legislator actually, each of them can choose a boy and a girl from their districts to come to Space Academy for Leading Students of Alabama. It's a program called SALSA. And several other states, I believe, has expressed interest in a model like this, and so we're very excited about that. We know some children get to come once, and that is impactful. Mm-hmm. Some have the opportunity to come again and again, and there's sort of this cult following. We're seeing generational now. So in the registration process, we ask if either parent is a Space Camp alum, and we're seeing about 15 to 17% of our students each week, their parent came to Space Camp.
That's great.
And so now I think I need to ask a question for your grandparent. Did your grandparent come to Space Camp? But we really, we also have many companies who sponsor scholarships, and they might sponsor their own employees' children to come. Some will sponsor and allow us to choose through our scholarship application process. So there's lots of ways to get children here.
Did your children come?
Actually, mine did. All three of my children came to Space Camp, and really, my two sons came twice, thanks to Grandpa. It was a Christmas gift. And then my daughter, actually, she's the youngest. She came twice on Grandpa, and then twice after I started working here.
Wow.
And so, none of them are destined to be astronauts. But I think, it's those soft skills. It's the growth thing. My daughter that came 4 times is as far from STEM, but she grew from the experience, and she's made lifelong friends. And in fact, the last 2 times it was with and coordinated with folks that she'd met on previous trips here.
You gonna send yours?
I'm lucky enough that my kids are growing up in it, which is kind of fun. So my son is 4, and he looks at me every morning when I'm getting ready for work. And when he was real little, he'd say, "Daddy, do you have to go to work today?" I go, "Yeah, buddy." He goes, "You can go fly a rocket ship today." I'm like, "You bet I am, buddy." But he comes up here all the time. My family loves to come up here, and he gets to kind of grow up in this world. And so as I'm creating some of this, I'm already bouncing ideas off him. Like, "Hey, buddy, what do you think about this idea?" Right. So he's helping to create it. And I think when they get older, my kids will be coming through here.
That's awesome. So you all do more than just Space Camp here. Tell me about some of you also do workforce development.
We do, and I would say we come at that from several different aspects. In terms of adults, we do corporate team building, and so a company can come in and bring their team. Sometimes we see where they've been working remotely, and now they're going to come back to the office. They're going to work together, and they haven't spent a lot of time together in person. What better way, to come together than to play and be 12, but then also break and talk about your company culture. We also, in our camp programs with kids, we used to say that we're thinly veiled workforce development, and I think now we just own it. And so not only with the technical aspects of the content and the curriculum, but we know that employees are successful when they can communicate and when they are good team players, and when they have confidence in their own abilities, and when they can be accountable to the team and to the company. And so I think that's where our strong suits are. It's in those soft skills, but I think really they're power skills. And I think our camp alumni are better employees.
That's wonderful. We also talked, Nathan, a little bit about, you mentioned ID4. Can you tell our listeners what that is?
Yeah, Inspiration 4 comes from the first civilian all-crewed mission to space, with Jared Isaacman kind of leading the charge on that. He was the commander of that mission, and that was Inspiration 4, flying on a SpaceX Dragon capsule. He raised, I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong here, Robin, $250 million for St. Jude's through that. And when he got back, he came to space camp when we found out he came when he was a kid, and impacted him greatly. So he's given back to us. So he's helped make a very sizable donation to help build this new building. And in that building, we're doing some of the coolest stuff. I mean, when we're talking about we're changing the face of space camp, we're changing it for a long time coming. In that building, we're going to have an indoor ropes course. So this is a 2-level belay course, 26 total obstacles, 4 climbing walls in there, an indoor zip line. Should be really cool. We talked about the mission areas, but there's 3 mission areas coming in. There's going to be a space station, a Mars habitat, as well as a full mission control mission, which I'm really excited about. Moving down the line, many people have come and they understand our astronaut training simulations, but we're redoing some of those. So we'll still have the MAT and the 5 degrees of freedom chair, but we're going to redo the 1/6 gravity simulation, and now it's going to be 1/6 and 1/3, which I'm really excited about. And then moving down the line, we're moving into our aviation wing. We're going to have a whole aviation wing inside this building, which is going to have Barani chairs, night vision training. We're working on simulation there. VR, virtual reality parachute simulations. So get to experience what it's like to jump out of a plane, which is going to be a blast. An indoor drone room. And we're in the works of looking at our future there of how do we put more simulations in the space. So flight simulations, we've applied for some grants with that. So there's a lot of cool stuff coming into this building, but it's a 50,000 square foot new building, which we're hoping to open up here in the next 2 years.
How do you all figure out what's going to go in there? And then how do you find those technologies and those things?
He's the dreamer.
I mean, it stems back from when I was a kid. I've just always been dreaming. My dad liked to call me the professional winging it guy when I was a kid. So, really, I'm winging it, but we're meeting some really great industry professionals. It started with a conversation with Jared for the simulation side. He said, you can talk to the folks that do professional simulations, but why not talk to a video game company? I mean, that's what we're trying to do, is be really immersive with this. So, I just started Googling and poking around, and I ended up coming across this company that we're working with. And they've been absolutely amazing. Pure Imagination Studios. They're some of the best guys out there. That's one. Researching indoor ropes courses, just figuring out, who does this and how do we get the best in here. We've toured some great facilities for our aviation wing. I mean, the Air Force worked with us a little bit to get us out to one of their facilities to explore and tour and look, and they gave us contacts. I mean, truly, if you mention the name Space Camp, no matter where you are, almost guaranteed somebody has a contact that's either been to Space Camp, knows somebody that came, something, and
Wants to go.
Exactly. Wants to go. They love it here. And they're so willing to work with us. They want to be a part of what we're doing. I mean, it's not only a cool job, it's very inspirational to see all these folks that are just like, you guys are doing wonderful things in this world. It's impacted me, and all the stories I get to hear about the impact it's had and how they've changed industry because of it.
Yeah, and then just to add to that, so, some of the content there is very intentional. So as we're working to bring our camp activities more into a camp sphere to free up some of the real estate that we carry in the museum spaces, as we can pull some of the areas out. But also, as we think about areas for growth in Space Camp, to add some more mission space then allows us a little more freedom in the way that we can schedule, allows us to schedule more of the immersive missions for our campers. But the whole aviation wing is a focus that we want to expand this season. So currently, Aviation Challenge is a summer-only camp because many of those activities are outdoors. And so, but also aviation is a growing field. Alabama is leading many efforts. When it comes to workforce development, it's something that we really have the opportunity in Alabama, and we really want to stoke that excitement in the students that are coming through to know, again, who thought Alabama was a place for space or aviation, but we're looking at Airbus. You're looking at so many opportunities with drones and unmanned systems, the opportunities that kids don't even know, that's a job, like you could get paid for that. It's really exciting to see, but that's, looking at ways that we can be intentional in our growth and still stay on mission.
What happens to the simulations and things that are housed currently that you've been using?
So a lot of this is in addition to, so like the ropes course, the indoor ropes course will be in addition to the outdoor ropes course. We're Alabama. We get a lot of weather here in the summer. It's hot. So a lot of times we have to move inside. This allows us some of that space so that we don't miss activities. It relieves some of that pressure. Now, the astronaut training simulations, that's a replacement. So those sims where they currently are will move into this building and be housed there. But it's a bigger space. We're going to have more simulations in there. So it just allows relief across the board. So we're not as jam-packed in some of the other areas.
And you said that frees the museum up to have a little bit more space to put exhibits in.
Right. So I partner with my museum counterparts, as we look at strategically the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, and we've just put the Pathfinder shuttle back up, but we don't really have a robust shuttle exhibit.
Right.
And so that is one of the things that we're working together on. How do we create that space? And so making some adjustments in who sits where, which exhibits, which area that camp is in offers that opportunity.
And by relieving some of that pressure, it allows more growth in the future in certain areas. So we can, as I'm thinking about, the next 5, 10, 15 years, we're 7 years away from Space Camp's 50th anniversary. We're looking at how do we keep adding things in, and not just to add in for the sake of adding in, but intentional additions to our campus and to our areas. So there's a lot of opportunity for growth in our future, which we're really excited about.
All right. Well, before we wrap up, I always ask the same last two questions of everyone. So the first question is, if you were offered an opportunity to go to space today, would you go?
I'm going to let Robin answer that one first.
That's a really good question. I might go as far as low Earth orbit. I don't know that I'm ready to go to Mars or even the moon, but I'd be there for you in mission control.
I'd go in a heartbeat. I would love to go. Now, my wife would say otherwise. Like Robin, I'd go to low Earth orbit in a heartbeat. And in 2015, we put the first Mars mission into Space Camp, and ever since then, I've just had a love with Mars, all things about it. So if it was just me, I would totally love to go to Mars. I think it'd be amazing.
And then the other question is, if you could give a young person advice today who is thinking about going into a field like yours, or aviation or aeronautics, or thinking about becoming an astronaut, what sort of advice would you give?
Be a good team player. Be coachable. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Look for mentors.
I would say I spent the first almost 20 years of my life trying to fit into what I thought was a mold. I wasn't quite sure of where to go. And so my advice would be explore different opportunities, what your interests are, and look for it. I never thought in a million years that I'd be in my dream job, doing what I'm doing. I just didn't think it existed. And I work hard. Eventually you'll figure out what your passions are, but pursue what interests you, pursue those passions. I promise you that something's out there that's going to meet your calling and you're going to fit in, and it's going to be amazing. What I find